So Flusurvey is an online system of tracking influenza across the UK, and we're linked to other flu surveys across Europe. So there's about 12 flu surveys within Europe in total. So what we're doing in the UK is we're asking people to join up and every week tell us how they're feeling. And in that way we're able to track influenza across the UK, as well as come up with risk factors for what makes you more likely to report having a flu-like illness and what makes you less likely to. So before us, most methods of looking at flu were based on GP or hospitalization data, and people who show up to hospital or to the GP with flu are not necessarily going to be representative of the overall population as a whole. So some people are more likely to go to the GP than others. Also, you're more likely to show up to the GP if you've got really severe cases of flu, and there's a spectrum. So some people who have flu are very, very ill and others are just mildly ill. And so you're not really able to get the whole idea of the spectrum of flu. And so by doing it online, we're hoping to get enough participants so that we can look at flu overall within the UK. And what we do is we also provide weekly reports of the incidence to the HPA. So we're involved with the Health Protection Agency. And we can look at risk factors such as you taking public transport, if you have a pet, gender, age, who you live with, and for the first time this year we're trying to get at the question of man flu, and if men are more likely to report more severe symptoms. So in the past we've found out that women were actually more likely to present or to report flu-like illness, but men may report more serious symptoms. So for the first time this year we've introduced a question asking you to rate how you're feeling on a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being the best health you could imagine and 0 being, well, fairly poorly. So just to give you an idea of what we've done in previous years, so this up here is data from last year's flu survey. So Flusurvey has been running for 4 years now. And so last year, these are two graphs looking at the incidence of people reporting flu-like symptoms. So this red line on both of them is actually confirmed flu. So that's when we know that there was confirmed flu around. So this first one is looking at people who are vaccinated and people who are unvaccinated. So this green line is people who were vaccinated against flu, and this blue line is people who are unvaccinated. And you can see that in periods when there wasn't much confirmed flu, there wasn't much difference. However, when we know that there was flu around, people who are unvaccinated were much, much more likely to be reporting flu-like illness, where people who are vaccinated, there wasn't as much of a difference. So if you look at overall our data from last year, there's only about a 10% greater risk of reporting flu-like symptoms if you were unvaccinated. However, if you look at during this period where there was a lot of flu, you can see that it's a much bigger difference. If you compare that to, this is data looking at public transport use. So again, this red line is confirmed cases of flu. The blue line is people who don't use public transport. The green line is people who use public transport. And you can see that there's very little difference. In fact, during the time of the highest peak of flu, people who didn't use public transport actually had a little less, reported fewer symptoms, although, I mean, that's not in any way significant. But this shows that basically, at least last year, there wasn't any increased risk for reporting flu-like illness if you took public transport. It's going great. We've got over 3,000 participants. We're hoping to get at least 5,000, so we're just over halfway there. Here you can just see some graphs of our participants for this year. So we've only asked for reports for two weeks now, so we don't actually have any good flu data yet. But here you can take a look at the age and region of the participants. So you can see this is London, so not surprisingly we have the highest number of participants from London. We're really sort of lagging behind in Northern Ireland, the Northeast, as well as the Midlands. So we're really trying to recruit more participants from these regions. If you look at the colors, this represents different age groups. So in the age group 19 to 45, that's this orange bar here, that's where we have our the highest number of participants. So the older age groups, the 65 plus, were lagging behind, as well as in the 0 to 18, the youngest age group. So we're really hoping to recruit some more participants from here. If you look at weekly incidence by age, so this is the 2 weeks. And the first week, we always find a bit more because the question is worded such that, have you reported symptoms since your last visit? And so some of these are going to be historical, so a few weeks. So this represents probably more than 1 week of reported flu-like illness. So for that reason, the first week is always much, much higher. And this is more general what we'd expect to find at this time of the year. So you can see that flu-like illness is with the highest incidence in the 19 to 45 age group, 45 to 65 less, and least in the 65 and older. And we found this last year as well, that the oldest age group actually reported less flu. So this year we're going to be looking at severity of symptoms in the older age groups to see if they're perhaps reporting slightly high, more severe symptoms. This one is looking at overall incidence by region. Now these are not age stratified, so there might be some of this might be caused by different percentages of different age groups, because you can see that there's different incidences by age group. But we're finding that in our limited population that we have from the Northeast, we have the highest incidence there, as well as in Northern Ireland, and the lowest incidence in the East Midlands, as well as Eastern England and London. It's very easy. You just log on to flusurvey.org.uk, and there's a join the survey button, and you just press the survey button, and then you can start. We first ask you to fill in a background profile. So this will ask you general questions as to risk factors, such as do you take public transport, do you have pets, age, gender, where you work, things like that. It's all completely anonymous. And then every week we ask you just to tell us how you're feeling. So and we will send you a newsletter every week. So you can just click on the link and it should bring you right to your symptom page. If you're healthy, you just click on the I'm healthy. And the only other question we ask is now this, how are you feeling, 0 to 100? And so that's it. It probably takes about 10 seconds if you're feeling healthy. If you're not feeling healthy, it takes a couple more minutes, because we ask you about the duration of your symptoms, how bad your symptoms are, if you've taken any kind of medication, if you've called a GP, if you've been to the GP, if you have fever, and if so, how high, and so those kinds of questions. So if you do have symptoms, it'll take a couple of minutes. This year, for the first time, we have 2 different competitions. The first one is we're really trying to get more people involved. So we're asking the participants to recruit other members. And to do this, when you fill out your background profile, there's a question that says, how did you hear? And if you say referred by a friend or coworker, you get a box and it asks to put in their username. And every person you recruit, you get entered into a drawing. And the second competition that we're having is a number of times that you fill in your survey. So every week that you fill in your survey, you get entered into a second prize draw. And for both of these, we're giving away a Google Nexus, a Kindle Fire, as well as all sorts of lovable, huggable flu viruses, giant flu viruses.